If you ask anyone to name a hero from the early American frontier, one young woman almost always comes to mind. But we tend to picture her doing one very specific thing, standing at the front of an expedition, pointing the way west. This image of the lone, intuitive pathfinder is deeply cemented in our folklore and is currently minted onto our national currency. But history shows a technical process. This map reveals the meticulous route recorded by Lewis and Clark using specialized cartographic tools. Spanning thousands of miles from the Mississippi to the Pacific, no single teenager could memorize this massive uncharted geography. If her primary role wasn't navigating the terrain, it raises a question. What did she do to become the expedition's most indispensable member? To understand her value, we have to look at the environment she was born into. As a member of the Shoshone tribe in present-day Idaho, she was raised in a landscape that demanded absolute resilience. As a young girl, she was captured by a rival tribe, the Hidatsa, and forced hundreds of miles away from her family and her homeland. Later, she was sold into marriage to a French-Canadian fur trader named Toussaint Charbonneau. To survive this constant displacement, she had to adapt to new cultures and master multiple languages on the fly. In 1804, when Lewis and Clark hired her husband as an interpreter, she was permitted to join the journey. She was only around 16 years old, and she was carrying her newborn infant. That baby proved to be one of the expedition's greatest assets. When unknown tribes spotted a heavily armed group of men approaching, they naturally assumed it was a hostile threat. But seeing a young mother and her infant traveling with them changed that perception. Because war parties did not travel with women and children, her presence acted as a living shield of peace. Diplomacy was only part of her daily reality. The rivers they navigated were violent and unpredictable, constantly threatening to tear their wooden boats apart. During one severe storm, a boat carrying the expedition's critical journals and scientific instruments nearly capsized. While her husband panicked, she reached into the freezing water to rescue the sinking records and supplies. On dry land, she was just as vital. When rations ran low, she used her knowledge of the local ecology to dig up wild licorice, locate artichokes, and identify the plants that kept the men from starving. She also served as a continuous communication bridge. By translating Shoshone into Hidatsa, which her husband then translated into French, and another member into English, she allowed the captains to negotiate safe passage. Those translation skills were tested when the expedition hit the Rocky Mountains. Attempting the crossing on foot was practically a death sentence. The mission needed horses to survive. As the negotiations with a local Shoshone band began, she realized the chief sitting across the fire was her long-lost brother. This reunion secured the horses and supplies the explorers required to cross the peaks. Her true contribution wasn't cartographic navigation. It was the specific, practical skills required to survive an unforgiving environment. Lewis and Clark successfully reached the Pacific Ocean and returned home, completing a truly monumental feat of exploration. But the daily logs reveal that without her ability to diffuse hostile encounters, forage for food, and negotiate for lifelines like horses, the mission likely would have ended in starvation or conflict. Defining her as a guide overlooks the breadth of her contributions. She functioned as a diplomat, an expert survivalist, and a crisis manager, performing these specialized roles while carrying her infant son. Her story reflects the vital contributions of Indigenous women, whose knowledge of the landscape and intertribal connections were necessary for the success of American expeditions. Sacagawea's legacy proves that history's most important figures are not always the loudest. Often, they are the ones who endure hardship, adapt to any crisis, and lead with quiet, unshakable resilience.